So we have this giant balloon that's filled with water that was left after youth group that I'm gonna go ahead and take care of, or at least try to. I'm a little nervous. Oh my gosh. Oh God. You know, I should have known better. I don't know what I was expecting to happen, but I was surprised that the balloon popped. Don't know why. That's a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today in the lesson. So let's go ahead and dive in and look at this passage. It says, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal among you, which comes upon you for your testing, as though some strange thing were happening to you. But to the degree you share the suffering of Christ, keep on rejoicing, so that also at the revelation of his glory you may rejoice with exultation." The truth that challenges and trials are to be expected is not an easy one. And this is a difficult reality for Christians and for people who have put their faith in Jesus. Peter recognizes this, and so he begins this hard truth with the reminder that he cares about them like a father cares for his children. And so, oh my goodness! Peter's not just coming along and being like, "You pathetic people, how dare you be surprised, ha ha," no, he comes along like a loving father addressing his children and telling them hard truths. Then he goes on to say, "Do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal among you." And so this picks up on a theme that we see throughout 1 Peter, which is that Christians are not immune to difficulties, but God actually allows them. As Christians, as Christians, we will face additional challenges and persecution and suffering because we are Christian. So the call, don't be surprised at whatever fiery ordeal you may be going through. Y'all, I want to just pause and I want to tell you right now, this whole COVID-19 virus is one of those trials that God knew about and he's not surprised about. And we can take comfort in that. I don't know what God is doing with COVID-19, this whole thing, and all the repercussions and implications of it. But I do know, based on this passage, he can redeem this. It goes on to say, "Don't be surprised at the fiery ordeal which comes upon you for your testing, as though some strange thing were happening to you." And so he says he allows these things and we should expect them and be ready for trials for the testing. And what is this testing? It's the testing of our faith. And this again stems back to 1 Peter 1, 6 through 7, where we got the analogy of the gold, right? And so this precious metal, this precious mineral is stuck in the fire. And as it's in the fire, all the things that are not valuable, that are not precious, rise to the surface and they are scraped to the side, and what's left is the precious and the most valuable. And so he's just increasing and showing just how valuable our faith is as we go through these trials. And so I'm not saying we are wrong or we aren't good Christians if we aren't surprised or if we're struggling in trials, but I am saying we can expect challenges. And one of the reasons for any trial in your life is to help wake you up, I would say, and snap you out of complacency, to stir your hearts and cause you to question what really matters. Sometimes, as Christians, we can be lulled into a spiritual sleep by the comforts and the routines, and we begin to put our hope and our security in the things of this world instead of in the great, good God, who's the source of joy and hope. And then a trial comes that shakes up everything, and it's like a bucket of cold water being poured on us as we're trying to take a nap, and it's just like, bah! What just happened? Getting cold water poured on you while you're in the middle of a nap is not fun. Well, let me tell you, nap, and it's just like, bah! You know? God allows us to go through these things so that we ask questions. Our faith begins to be tested. You know, this idea of testing, that to pass or fail. When you take a test, you either pass it or you fail it. To fail this test is to say, Jesus, you are not worth all these trials. You were supposed to make it easy for me. I'm tired of not seeing. I'm tired of, just putting faith without any real sight, and this is hard. And so I'm gonna do my own thing, and I'm gonna go my own way instead of trusting you. And I think we can do that whether blatantly or just by being complacent and just being like, well, whatever, and not caring. And to pass the test, that's failing. To pass the test is to say, Jesus, you are my everything. Where else can I go but to you? You are my rock and my strong foundation. In you, my soul can rest. In you, I cannot be shaken. And so despite trials, to pass is to say, God, I'm coming to you. So that's verse 12. Now, verse 13 is a call for us to rejoice in him. Rejoicing doesn't necessarily have to look like that, but if we are truly ready to face trials, and by ready I mean we make Christ as our ultimate good and our ultimate joy and peace and security, we can be ready to face trials with joy. And so the big question, and I kind of touched on this a little bit, but the big question is, how can we rejoice when things are really hard? And it's hard to rejoice. We don't want to rejoice. And so again, going back to, there is a need, that's why there is a need to be ready, to have this readiness about us, an expectation. And we need to find our bedrock hope and security and joy in Jesus ultimately. And so to whatever, in addition to making God our ultimate good and our ultimate joy, we also need to know that to whatever degree we are suffering Jesus Christ has been there, and he has taken it to the nth degree further. And so we can take comfort in that, and that this is part of that training our mind to rejoice even in trials, because God's with us through it, and he knows what we are feeling and dealing with. So this suffering unites us in a unique way to him. And that's something that when we make him our ultimate good and our joy, that's something that we can rejoice about. And so you can rejoice in this quarantine because Jesus is there. He is with you. As my parents often say, Jesus is in your house. He knows what it's like to feel alone because at the cross, his friends left him. And he was forsaken by the world. But ultimately, he did this for the joy set before him because he was going to be resurrected and exalted. His name is above all names. And so in the same way, to the degree that you share in the sufferings of Christ, keep on rejoicing so that at the revelation of his glory, he's coming back, people. He's coming back. At the revelation of his glory, you may rejoice with exultation. And so as we make him our greatest good and we share in this unique suffering with him, we can rejoice now, even though it's hard and challenging and painful, and it doesn't necessarily look like this. We can have that steady joy. But ultimately, there's going to be a time where there's going to be more rejoicing when he returns and we see, oh yes, God, it was all worth it. It all makes sense. And so in all this, I'm sure there will be other trials that you face, whether as a result of the COVID-19 stuff that's going on or just unrelated to that. I guarantee you're going to face other trials and suffering. And I encourage you not to be caught off guard and not to allow the enemy to lull you into this false security. Video games or social media or binge watching whatever show or sleeping until noon. Those aren't necessarily terrible things, or that those in themselves are not sin, but are you looking to find your satisfaction and security and your happiness and your joy and your contentment in those things, in just the comforts? Be disciplined to grow in godliness. Be in God's word. Set aside time, like pick up a piece of paper and spend time noting how are you spending your time. And then make changes and adjustments. Making sure you're in God's word. Making sure you're setting aside time for prayer. And also, I just encourage you during this time, don't let a root of bitterness grow in your home right now. Be the first to act in reconciliation. These are the kind of things that the enemy lulls us into a complacency and a sleep, and then we're not ready when difficulties come. And so I just encourage you all to continue to seek God during this time and go to him. So until next week, I'm praying for you all. I really miss you. Miss getting together. But I'm trusting that God's going to redeem this. And so, love you guys. We'll see you later.